Hi everyone, thanks for joining me. Today's topic in this video is going to be knife making. I'm going to go about this whole video a little different than I normally do. My average video is just start to finish a whole project and I explain what I did along the way. In this video I'm going to just break it apart into different videos, so I guess a series, and I'm kind of coming up with all this and developing it as I go. So you're going to see it more, this project more in a natural way versus how I would normally do it, which just sort of shows it all in one condensed video. I think condensed videos are good because it lets someone kind of watch that video at their own pace. They don't have to wait for anything. But this one I thought would be good to show that process of how you come up with a design and the influences you have, and then also use this as an opportunity to talk a little bit about knife making in general as it applies to me and what my plans are with it. So I've kind of got a little list of things I'm going to look at. As far as my knife making goes, I'm strictly doing it for fun, the challenge of doing it, and I just like learning craft. I think it's fun to learn a new craft, but especially when you're a person who is already experienced in one craft and you have your main thing, your main discipline or skill or trade or whatever it is, and then you go to another one and you sort of take what you know from that one and apply it to another one. So you're going to come at it from a different perspective than a person who is a knife maker. And I like that. So for one example, my main thing, the first thing I learned was woodworking, and then later I came into doing a lot more metalworking, and so I kind of came at that from a woodworker's perspective. And it's kind of interesting contrast between how I'll do something and how someone who was originally trained as a metalworker. So I think coming into knife making, even though you're mainly metalworking, it's the same kind of thing, because you're going to come into it with your design and your aesthetic, and then your skill with the wood and how you sort of translate that into fooling with the metal, shaping the blade. Of course, you got the handle materials, decorative aspects, soldering. There's all the different things that you end up doing with knife making. So that's sort of where I'm at with the knife making. And my goals long term is I'm just strictly, again, I just want to have fun doing this. It's a break from doing my woodworking and engraving work, which I'm mainly doing a lot of that. At least what I'm doing when I'm doing that. The projects is financial. I'm doing that stuff to make money. I do other woodworking projects just for fun as well, but most of it is customer work. So it's not always exactly what I want to be doing, even though I enjoy it. So when I do these knives, I'm only doing them because I want to. So I want to make this video in this manner because I think it would make the whole process more fun to me. If I'm worried about how I do every single shot in the whole video, it kind of can make certain projects not quite as enjoyable as they normally would because of the weird positions you're in and having to slow down and move the camera so much. So I'm just going to ramble about my thoughts and show different steps throughout this whole process. And in this video, we're just going to be going over what I'm talking about now, the design of this knife, some of the materials, and the tools. Other goals that I have, I would like to make extremely well-crafted knives. I know that sounds kind of, I guess that's what everyone's trying to do, but that's one thing I'd like to do, is to make things to where when you examine that knife, you can't find anything at all that could have been done better, maybe outside of your opinion of the design. And then in general, though, to get a little more specific on that, is I want to make knives that are more showpieces than users. And what I mean by that is, this knife, for example, one that I made, this is a user. So it's just a stainless steel blade. This is a knife that I made, and I use it when I go to the river or go camping or something like that. So I've got a little sheath made from leather and carry it on my belt. Very handy, extremely sharp, wears well, and it works really good. But I'm not worried about this knife. I want to make knives that are more for show, so they be larger knives, just not as utilitarian as something like this. Of course, in the end, they're going to be sharp. You could poke somebody with it. You could cut something with it. It's, a knife is a knife. But so selecting materials as far as the blade, handle material, and then adornment in the end, whether it be engraving or handle inlays, stuff like that. That's the kind of thing I really want to kind of get into, and it'd be kind of fun because then maybe down the road you could submit the photos of your knife to a magazine or some sort of a knife making contest or something like that. I don't know. I'm just throwing out different thoughts. So now let's go ahead, we'll change positions, and we'll take a look at some of the knives that I have made, some of the knives that I am currently working on, and some of the knives that I own that I'm just looking at, that I have in my possession, that I can sort of base some of my thinking off of. I also look at a lot of stuff on the internet, but there's a difference between looking at a picture on the internet and holding something in your hands. So let's have a look. Here's my selection of knives, and I'm going to try to go over all this as quickly as possible, but I am long-winded, so it won't be but so quick, but I'll try. These are knives that I've made, and then these are knives that I just own or have right now in my possession that I'm sort of basing certain things off, techniques, or just looking at them and interested in certain aspects. Basically, these are just knives that I'm looking at that aren't on the internet right now, that are right in front of my face. The first knife you guys saw me make was this small knife here, and then you saw me make this knife, which is a fake Randall. So if you'd like to see those knives, you can click down below and see those be made. And then these are two other knives. I think I've posted some pictures here and there of these. These are sort of outdoor knives, at least for me. I take them to the river, camping, wear them when I'm working, and depending on what I'm doing. All the knives that I've made so far, except for that first knife that I made, are made out of 440C stainless. So just a stainless steel, real common to blade knife making. Both of these knives, I also made the handle material, which I'm going to just refer to it as micarta. I think you call it phenolic material is really what you call it. But I made the material, and so this knife handle is made out of burlap, so it is burlap and then resin, and this is just fiberglass resin. So it's just stacks of layers of the burlap pushed down between two boards, clamped down, wax paper around them. Then afterwards you end up with a rigid material that you can shape, and all different kinds of cool patterns come out in it. So that's pretty fun. You can go to the fabric store and buy all different colors of that. Other than that, these two knives, I made sheaths for them. I posted pictures of them, but there they are. There it is in person. Hope I'm getting a good focus on this stuff. Looks like it's kind of going in and out. But these were fun sheaths to make. It's kind of cool to, the range of materials you work with doing knives, wood, leather, metal of all different types, and natural materials like bone and horn. It's all kinds of cool stuff you can do. Two other knives that I'm working on. I'll show this one first. This is a large dagger. So this would be a military style. I can't think of what the knife's called, but it was, I think, an English knife that the airmen had as kind of like tied to their leg or part of sewn onto their pants or something like that. But it's some sort of a military style dagger. My father has one of the knives. One of the real ones, and I just wanted to make this one. I made this out of an old file, so the blade is a file. Won't go too far into any of these knives because I've got separate videos that'll come out on them. But this knife comes in two pieces, so this is the main part of the knife. So the blade and the tang is a full tang. The back of the tang is threaded. This small little piece I turned on the metal lathe is tapped, and then the guard goes on, blade's on, and then this piece threads on. And in the end, I'll peen the back of this, the tang, and this will all be locked together. But I turned these pieces on the metal lathe. So once this is done, it'll be pretty neat. I'll make a black sheath for it, and then it'll just be all, fairly high. I'll probably high polish the blade and then polish up the handle maybe, or just put a nice even satin finish on the handle, maybe the blade too. But just working in different styles, I think it's best when you're learning to kind of do a range of styles. One thing to touch on real quick with this blade, in case some of you don't watch the other video, is this knife and this knife, same knife. This is a Randall knife. This is the copy I did of it. And the purpose of that was just to learn different techniques to where I could look at this knife and go, okay, I'm going to try to duplicate the grind on this knife. And that's to substitute having a teacher right in front of me, because I can just try to copy something that a person with experience has already made. And the same thing goes for all the other techniques on this knife, and then I'm able to compare them. Fit and finish, mine came out a little bit slicker looking as far as the level of finish I put on the blade and handle and stuff, but that's not really what Randalls are all about. It's a handmade knife, but it's still a production knife. So they're moving through those, making quite a few of them a year out of a small-ish shop in Orlando. So if you're not familiar with Randall, it's kind of an interesting company to look at. It's an American company. They got a good, honest start. Really like them, and but the knives are what they are. There's much nicer knives. These knives, retail price are, you know, $300 to $600 depending on what you're getting. Some of them are more, but the average is, you know, I think this one retails for like $450. Some of these knives actually cost more used than new because there's like a 5-year wait to get these knives because they're back ordered. So I think that's it for these knives that I've made. And all these knives are kind of like this one right here. There's a fellow, he's got a YouTube channel. His name's Aaron Golf, and his knife company is called Golf Customs. This knife's based off one of his. I really enjoy his videos. He's very technical in how he speaks about things, so I enjoy hearing that. You know, he really comes across as an expert, and so I like listening to him kind of talk about how he makes his knives, and he shows it all in detail, so it's pretty neat. So I wanted to make one kind of based on his just for fun. Again, I think it's a very simple design, but in simple design, you know, that means you the more things that aren't right really do show up because there's less stuff distracting from any small problems that may exist in a more ornate knife. Moving on to some of the other knives, let me reposition the camera a little better. These are some of the knives that I have that I'm just looking at, and I won't go too far into detail, but these 4 are Randall's. The design that I'm doing right now, it's the design I'm doing, I'm going to do 2 of the same knife in different scales and different materials. So the smaller knife, I think I'm going to maybe use some stag in the design. I'm going to show the design in a minute. So these 2 are nice to kind of look at. This one as well with that stag handle. So another thing to kind of think about, these 2 knives, this is the same model knife. These are Model 14s from Randall. This one, so it's a Model 14 Attack if you want to look it up. But you got different style guards, different handle material. This one has the tang, goes through the handle. I think it's not technically a full tang. I think it's called 3/4 tang or something like that. Somebody fussed at me in the video I made for misspeaking. And then this one's got that, this would be like, I guess, the same style guard that's on their number 1, model number 1. Here's a very large one. So this is one of the buoys, however you want to say it, and it's got nickel silver on it. What do you call this? I'm blanking right now, but you got the guard and the hilt. Is that right? Probably not. But those are engraved. This is a knife that's going to be engraved and sold. So the blade's all taped up right now just to keep the engraver from cutting himself. And this is another one. This is a knife by Pat Thomas. It's just a small one. I got this from my dad as a gift. Me and my brother got matching knives. Here's the little sheath. So got these knives as boys basically, which was a pretty nice nice gift. My dad knew this fella and ended up with those from him. And then here are 2 other knives just to kind of show them more than anything. These are 2 Buck 110s. I don't know if the focus will come in on this. It's kind of, give me a second. It's probably focused on the background. And there, let me see it for a second at least. One's got some traditional scroll work, and the other one has some oak leaves and acorns on them. So the reason I'm kind of showing a range of stuff is because I'm pulling from all these different things that I have, and then different designs on the internet that I like seeing. So let's pull in the actual design of this knife. We'll talk about it. In short, just to jump to it, there it is. Let me pull it in a little closer to the camera and let you see. Give me a second. There we go. That looks pretty good. So that is the initial design. And I've kind of got a rough idea of some of the engraving that's going to be on the knife, thoughts on handle material. And so to pull in the actual materials, let me get everything set up and we'll talk about the materials that I'm thinking for one of the designs and then the other. Here's another look at the design. You can, of course, y'all can see, but to touch on it, I'm going to have, you know, that curve built into the blade, so there's going to be just this gentle swoop that goes throughout the whole design. And a lot of the terminology I'm not really familiar with knives, so I'm not going to worry about it, not going to be embarrassed about it. this, but I'm just going to kind of describe it. Y'all can all straighten me out. A lot of these words too, I know the word as far as I've read it, but I don't know how to say words. Like what's the word choil or something like. I think it's referring to this part of the knife. I don't know if that's how you actually say it though. But this area right in here, that's what I'm taking from this design that I made and bringing into this knife. And then I'm also going to be bringing a hollow grind into it. But where it'll vary is this was a straight grind. The hollow grind went straight down the straight blade, but this blade's going to be curved. So I'm going to be going from sort of learning / practicing the skill of hollow grinding on this knife to applying it to a curved blade. And then this one also had a sharpened top edge, and I'll be bringing that into this design too, but again it's going to be in a curved blade and coming into this really fine point, and then these different lines, these grind lines, are going to have to meet up nicely. So this will be a challenge with this knife. These are the two different sizes. I'm going to make one with a 6.5 inch blade and a 7.5 inch blade. The reason I wanted to do that is originally, you can see in this design, I've got this horn material as the handle, and I've already purchased that once I kind of came up with what I knew wanted. Let me see if that's coming in clearly. It's a little dark looking, but you get the idea. Not sure how to say exactly what this horn is, either Gemsbok or Gemsbok. Looks like a big goat and a deer came together. But this is an African horn. I bought this off eBay for $20, so I may have participated in the death of this animal. And I don't feel good about that, but it's a pretty horn, and it'll make a nice knife handle. Supposedly, this is a very common animal over there, sort of like the whitetail in the east of the United States. So supposedly this animal is nowhere near being a problem as far as being taken for their meat and stuff like that. And I'm not trying to sound overly sensitive, but I don't want to be making this knife out of an elephant tusk. So that is the material for this portion of the design. And then I'm thinking about doing something right here different, not having that horn come all the way down to the guard. Thinking about making this out of a piece of bone or either a piece of wood even. But whatever I do, I want to shape that material towards a natural transition from this to this. So sort of creating one of these rolls in that horn and have that come into the shape, and that will make an easier transition from going from this material down to the size needed at the guard. And one of my ideas for this, and I'm pretty excited about it, is making this piece out of pewter. And for those of you who aren't familiar with pewter, this is a pewter dish, so you can see that color. So I think those colors would go nice together, and then in the end I can either have a higher satin polish like on this blade, or either maybe even dull this finish down even more like on this knife, or something in between. I'm not sure yet, but I think having all those darker gray tones could look pretty neat, but we'll see. And with this, this is just a plate that I got from Goodwill. I buy pewter stuff when I'm in thrift stores, and I make sure that it's not doesn't happen to be worth too much. And if it's not, this thing I paid $3 for, so I'll melt this down into casting grain and then make up some sort of a simple mold and cast this piece and then further shape it by hand. So that's what I'm thinking with that. The tang of this knife would probably go to somewhere around in here. And then the handle is, this horn is hollow, so I would have to fill this horn with epoxy, little by little to where it doesn't get too hot, and fill it in and make that into a solid material. The design you can see also this, so from here forward is the blade, and I want this section of the blade, so on this knife it would be sort of this whole section. The flats on the blade I'm going to engrave before I send it off to be hardened, and I may have areas recessed down to do some sort of a gold inlay as well. So I'm thinking having maybe a gold inlay and then do my name in the actual inlay. But I want to figure out some sort of engraving that makes sense to the theme of this knife, and the theme of this knife is kind of African. So, in thinking of this material, that may have some bearing on it. Whereas the smaller knife that I want to make, I'm going to make the back of the knife out of this, which is sambar. So this is a piece of stag, and I'll use that for that section, and some sort of nice cap on the end.
maybe my material here on the front of this may be something different. Might not use it. I might use the whole thing. But so this would be, you know, an India-inspired version and an African-inspired version. But I'm going to try to have my design sort of be cohesive a little bit and not just be totally random. In deciding what my engraving is, I just printed off a larger print-offs of that area on the blade, and then I just come up with different designs. So I'll just do these print-offs. I do this for all kinds of stuff that I'm doing, whether it be a knife or a piece of jewelry or something. You can kind of just print off a large shape, design it up, and then work your design out. So this is some wheat with a flag in the background. This would be some sort of, you know, I don't know, some sort of African desert tree, just a banner, some traditional scroll. So, like I said, I hope y'all guys kind of enjoy this video. This is the first one in the series on making these knives, so you can shut me down and tell me to shut up and stop talking so much if you want. Probably still won't do that, but you can kind of guide me a little bit of which way you want to go. In coming up with the design of these knives, what I did first is I just sketched the knife out. The original drawing was pretty small. I don't have it down here with me. I think I posted a picture of it. The original drawing had a little picture about that big. And then I enlarged it, and once I enlarged it to roughly the right size, the handle didn't look to be in the right scale to the blade. So what I did is, and this isn't supposed to be any kind of look at me thing, but just kind of talking to different people, and people go, well, don't do it that way, you goofball. You know, try this. And I go, yeah, that's a good idea. So like, I printed it off, and I cut the handle off of this print off, and I cut the blade of another one, taped them together, and stuck it in my 3-in-1 copier printer thing, and then copied out a version and got the scale right, at least to me. And then what I also did, once I had that printed, is I started resizing the entire knife as a whole, just to see at what scale do I think this knife would look best. And really, you know, I got it at 7.5 inches here. That's about as small as I can make it and still use this, the portion of this handle. I want to use the portion of the handle of this horn right in this section as the handle in this knife. So I need it scaled up large. But I think at a 6.5 inch blade, 11.5 inches overall, this is where the knife is best. You know, as far as the scale goes, I've got a medium, you know, to large hand. So you can sort of see that's about how large it would be versus, you know, that, which is, you know, getting pretty big. You know, starting to get into some sort of miniature sword almost at this point. But still a knife, you know. That's, you know, this is a big knife, but it's more like a fighting combat style knife. So you can see it's roughly the same scale. But, you know, just because it's the same scale, you know, doesn't mean, you know, if the design's different, it doesn't always look right. So let me see. I guess that's it as far as the design goes. My materials are, this is a 1/4 inch piece of 440C, that's for this one. And then I've got a piece of 3/16 inch 440C stainless, and I'm going to use that one for this one. And then the rest of the metal pieces on the knife, again, I may use pewter. If I use pewter, I may make this piece and then the cap on the back out of pewter as well. I'm not sure. It looks kind of funny when you get too much stuff mixed up. At the same time, I may just use a piece of bone on this and then make these pieces out of nickel silver or even stainless. And I have some stainless for doing that. This is a piece of 3/4 inch wide, 3/8 inch thick by 12 inch piece of stainless. And I'm buying all this again from Texas Knife Supply. I think I'm saying that right. So I can't remember the exact cost on this stuff. It's not the cheapest thing in the world, but you know, one knife project will last you a long time, and it's a lot cheaper than a lot of other stuff people do. So one of these knives, yeah, I think this knife here probably cost me, the piece of metal that I used to make out of the blade was like $25. You know, this is probably $2 or $3, $2 of a, you know, section of a piece of stainless. The piece of micarta was maybe, I think it was $6 or $8, and then just a small section of tubing for the hole in the back. There's a little bit of solder involved, a lot of sandpaper, and a couple belts. So, you know, I maybe have $50 in the cost of making this knife. So when you go to Walmart and you buy a knife, it is surprisingly well made for being in Walmart, and out of a pretty nice steel, and you pay $30 for it. You know, you really are getting something. This is one of my knives that's a Walmart knife. It's extremely nice, you know, for what it is. It's a stainless blade, rosewood or ironwood handles, whatever. I think it's ironwood. This is a very handy knife that I've used on a lot of stuff. I need to fix or either remake the sheath, but this was Ozark Trail, and I think they're basically selling it now as a Coleman type thing. It's basically the same design, just a little bit different. Very nice knives for barely anything. This was a $10 knife, and this would sort of be on the same level as this. And you know, there's a lot of time mixed up in making something like this, so don't whine about a Walmart knife costing too much, for sure. I guess that's it. That little Walmart spat got me a little sidetracked. So that's it as far as design and materials. I'll try to go ahead and wrap this up pretty soon, but I wanted to show you again the tools and my workspace as well. This is sort of the corner of my basement shop where I do anything metal related, jewelry, knives, engraving. My metal lathe is over here. Anything where I need kind of more precise tools working at a small bench like this. This is my grinder, and I can't think. I think it's called a Speed Cut, I think is what it's called. It's a 2x72 grinder, and it's pretty good. I like it. It's got the polishing wheel on one side of it, so that's a really handy thing to have for knife making, especially. I mean, I use it most for the engraving stuff, belting down firearms, and then doing some polishing. Not a lot, it's more kind of cleaning things up. But I have an assortment of belts. Those are the belts for those of you not familiar. These are some very fine belts, and then these are some Norton Blaze belts, more coarse ones. I really like the Norton Blaze belts. I don't have a lot of experience with other ones, but I can say that I do like these. They range from $8 to $12 a piece, so they are not cheap, but I get a lot of use out of them, and I use them probably a little longer than a real knife maker would be willing to use them, but try to get as much out of them as I can. And then, so there's the rest of the space, and we'll reposition and go over some of the more specific tools. This is my little engraving area right here on the corner, so later on when this knife is engraved, it'll be done right here. And right here at this bench, that's where I was showing you the knives earlier. That's where I do the majority of the work. These benches are 36 inches tall, and I just have a little stool that I sit at and keep all my tools and stuff, for the most part, in these drawers, my different supplies, materials. And then I recently put this shelf here, and so in this, on the shelf, I've got my different materials for making handle material out of, those are fabrics for doing some micarta. I've got boxes of files and hammers and different stuff, sandpaper up there, epoxies and all kinds of stuff. So for the most part, I'm making these knives fairly simply. They all start out again as bar stock like this. So it's just a flat rough. It's got the mill finish on it. And I need to get all that off. I have a thickness sander for woodworking that I've been running my stock through and cleaning it up, which works okay, but that's kind of an expensive thing to do as far as ruining that paper. But the initial shaping I'm doing with a grinder, and I really like using a grinder because it's an inexpensive way, and if you're good at using a grinder, you've got a lot of control. So I just use cut-off discs. It's a pretty cheap way to go instead of using a bandsaw to cut these out. You're not going to break a bandsaw blade. You know, I can cut out 2 knives probably, or maybe more than that with a brand new cut-off wheel, and then I'll follow it up with a normal grinding wheel and clean it up farther. I hope I had that in the shot, but you know, again, just using a normal grinder. Let's see. As far as other tools go, I know this is real elementary, talking about some of this stuff. Where is it at? Well, I can't find it. It's somewhere around here, but just basically a box of just a small selection of Nicholson files, and I'll use the files to hone in shapes like this, a round file, use a file to do a lot of this shaping, and then I'll use my my grinder to do a lot of the final shaping, and I'm using the grinder to do all of the actual, to actually form the grind on the knife as far as the cutting edge goes. But yeah, basically you can make the entire knife with a hacksaw and some files and sandpaper if you need to, because with files you can buy them in coarse files to fine files, and then of course sandpaper the same way. So if you want to get into knife making, you don't have a whole lot of excuse to not be able to do it on some level. Pick a very simple knife, use really simple materials and simple tools, and you can make a whole knife at your kitchen table if you really wanted to. You will need some sort of a vise. I've got a little bench vise that I have on a piece of plywood, and I can clamp it anywhere and use it inside, outside, wherever. So that's it as far as the tools go. Of course, there's a lot more than that. I've got flex shaft tools and different types of other things that I use along the way, torches and stuff. But you know, that's the basics. I have a very elementary setup. The only thing that I have that would be considered special by someone getting started would be my grinder. Everything else is pretty easy to get things. You can buy files very inexpensively for what they do at Lowe's and Home Depot. I would suggest getting something a little on the nicer side. Don't go to Harbor Freight and buy their files. They might work okay for certain things, but they'll dull fairly quickly. You know, get yourself at least a Nicholson or better.
Alright, well that was way too long. I hope you all bared with me. If not, you're no longer watching. But for those of you who did and enjoyed it, let me know. If you didn't enjoy it, let me know. That's alright too. I don't take any of this personally. I'm just some dude in my basement and you're just some guy or some girl in a chair watching a video, so there's no reason for anybody to get offended by the way I'm doing something, and there's no reason for somebody to, for me to get offended by something someone says that I have no idea who they are. So let me know about what you think about doing a video like this. If you like that much explanation. It's an experiment for me. I know some people have videos where they talk for half an hour. Some people can do some amazing video in 2 minutes. I don't know how they do that. I'm incapable of it. But, you know, let me know what you think about the project. If you have any thoughts about the design, I'd love to hear them. Different materials. If you got any links, pictures, you can send them to me on Facebook, email, or just send me a link. Leave a link in the description if YouTube will let you do that. If you have any questions that I may be able to answer, I'll do my best. Again, I'm not that experienced in this, but I do know a little bit about a lot of different things. And if I can kind of point you in the direction, maybe it's a source that I'm looking at, I can at least point you towards that source and then let them handle answering you. So thank you all so much for watching. If you're not familiar with my channel, I make all kinds of videos, woodworking and all that, and tools, woodworking, some engraving, some knife making stuff. I like to do a range of projects, talk about houses just a little bit as far as buying, selling, renting, you know, real estate related stuff. I know this is all nothing to do with knives, but it's kind of fun. Sometimes you get introduced into topics based on an interest in something different. So I hope that you were at least entertained on some level. Thank you all for watching, and if you want to see more, go to my website, www.thehomesteadcraftsman.com. You can also see me on Facebook.